good.
This is We Burlesque the podcast. I am your host, Viktor Devonne, and today is a timestamp of September 26th, 2020. I am in Southern California, and I have a New Yorker on the line. In fact, it's an exciting day because this is my first official Miss Exotic World person that I've ever had on the podcast. I've had a couple kings, or a couple best boylesques, but I have Miss 2016 Miss Poison Ivory. Hello, hello.
Hello. Hi there.
Hi. What a insane 4 years you've had since you've taken that crown.
Oh my God, has it been that long? It really does.
Yeah.
I guess it has been 4 years. It really doesn't seem like it, actually.
And you had been going to BHoF before then, or how often had you been going as an attendee?
My first Burlesque Hall of Fame weekender was in 2013.
Okay.
So that was the third one that I was attending, I believe, when I won the crown. I believe so. Maybe the fourth. 13, 14. Okay, it was the fourth one. I've gone every year since 2013, except for this year, obviously, because the actual weekender was canceled due to COVID.
Right.
So this has been my first time not in attendance.
What is that like? Does that feel like a piece missing from your agenda?
The part that I think I really miss is the reunion aspect of it. I really love the fact that I was guaranteed to see so many of my friends, for one weekend every summer. So it became very much a vacation for me, as well as a wonderful opportunity to perform, because I have been somehow on the stage performing for the last 5 years. So it did feel, like I was missing a bit of that. However, I do think that I am appreciating this time off due to COVID. At first, it was a little bit heartbreaking knowing that a lot of these events were going to get canceled. However, I have really grown to find this to be kind of a really good place for me to kind of rejuvenate myself and just not have the pressure of performing, 4 to 5 nights a week, because I've been full-time for, I guess, since like 2016. So right before I won Queen, I made the transition into being a full-time performer. So it's been nice to have some actual forced time off. It's gone a little bit longer than I think any of us really anticipated here in New York, but I am still trying to, be optimistic about it. And I am looking forward to what burlesque is going to be like on the other side of this.
Have you done any of the digital shows, or have you been keeping?
I have done a handful of them. I took a little bit of a break before when the Zoom shows and the online shows started. I think I did like 1 or 2 right when it happened. And then I took a little bit of a break. I would say that I probably average like 1 a month, maybe 2 a month, maybe. But like this has been going on for like 6 months now, and I definitely have done closer to 6 than 12 of these online shows. But yeah, I actually am finding that I appreciate the way that some of these shows have grown. I think the very first couple of weeks, there were some producers who really got out there right away. They were a bit of a visionary in a way to know that these online shows were going to do well, but there was quite a learning curve. So now coming and doing these shows that are happening now, I'm finding that the money has been really good. I think it's a lot easier for some people to actually be able to enjoy and support burlesque as much as they want, because they can do it from the comfort of their home. And now that the shows have a lot of the what's the word I'm looking for, or the phrase I'm looking for? Bumps have been smoothed out. You know what I'm trying to say? They've gotten, they've
Finesse.
gotten the flow down. Yes, they figured it out. So some of these shows that I've been a part of recently have been extremely like packed. I'm talking like 200 audience members in one Zoom room, and the money has been very comparable, like as far as working, like what I would make working as a New York performer in New York shows. I would say that the money has actually evened out. I'm just not doing as much as I used to do, which is okay. It is okay.
Do you have like a place in your home that is designated as the stage area or the backdrop?
Kind of, sort of. I have a place in the 3 homes that I have been rotating through over this COVID. But yeah, each place that I stay has its designated performance area. In my daughter's nursery is probably my favorite performance spot because I put up this, well, me and her mother, Alex, we put up this beautiful cherry blossom mural in her nursery, and I love to perform in front of that. Especially my pretty pink fan dances and stuff like that. I think it looks really nice in front of that backdrop. So, but yeah, I performed on a rooftop once for one of my shows, which was kind of fun. I just needed something. I had no real gimmick or anything. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to move the camera onto the roof. And so I had a little bit of an audience with other people in Bushwick on their roofs, enjoying a little bit of a sunset show.
Did they cheer? Did they respond?
Yes, they did. It was really nice. It was really, really nice. Some of them I'm sure recognize me, like pushing strollers and stuff down on the street. They got to see a different side of their neighbor, but they were all very supportive and very lovely.
Now, you've embraced technology during this time in a slightly different way. You've started up a video series. Can you walk me through that?
I have. It's always been a little bit of I don't want, a dream of mine sounds more extreme than it is, but something that I've really wanted to do was dabble in the world of YouTube and actually doing something with my channel. I already had a YouTube channel that I used to upload acts and stuff for booking purposes, but I never really used it as a place where I would put up blogs or, burlesque tutorials or anything like that. So with this time off, I decided to go ahead and actually turn my channel into a full channel. And so since the start a couple of weeks ago, I have up about 3 videos. One of them is just like a little bit of a intro into what I'm doing, and then I have a couple of top 5 tip videos that are out right now. I'm starting to slowly branch into speaking about burlesque more, which is you would think that that's all I would be talking about, but I do kind of want to show the other side of being a performer through this page, and my life as being a mother and juggling that and co-parenting and all of those things. I kind of want to be able to use that channel as a way to show all of those different facets of my life.
I mean, I fully support that. I've been a long-standing thought in my head that burlesque performers, part of the limitation of misogyny and just our culture being sort of anti-woman and anti-queer and a lot of different things, is that we can't be the fully rounded personalities that I think we deserve to be. And I think if we're going to give that right and privilege to reality stars, and you're going to let people who do competition shows and things like that actually get opportunities of being, that old Gypsy Rose Lee, where you were the guest on the talk show, or you were the one who got the book deal. Why not? I think it's absolutely within our grasp if we can safely do it. And it seems like you have taken a number of steps to allow your life to do that, basically.
Wow, I mean, I'm so glad that you see all this effort that I'm putting in. But yeah, I definitely feel like when it comes to burlesque, I know that the whole point of it is that we're creating these illusions, you know, that we're these glamorous, beautiful, wonderful people. But anybody who has ever been backstage or who's ever stepped foot on stage as a performer knows that we are full, you know, full on personalities.
Mm-hmm.
And the bits that people see on stage are literally just that. It is a tiny, small part of our personalities that is extremely choreographed and like we're purposefully showing you something. We have created a fantasy that we want the audience to see, and that is what we show them.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do have a lot of things that I'm interested in outside of being a burlesque performer. I love the fact that I am able to use my, you know, theater background or my dance background and all of these things in my performances, but I also love writing, and, you know, I have these aspirations to do so much more, and I don't understand why I can't do that under the burlesque umbrella. I've worked very hard to establish myself as Miss Poison Ivory. I don't see why Miss Poison Ivory can't also be an author or can't also have a YouTube channel or, you know, whatever. The sky is the limit.
Mm-hmm.
And I am all about manifesting abundance. So, you know, bring on these lingerie and perfume deals, please, universe. Thank you.
I mean, I think it's fair. Again, it's sort of this model, actress, dancer personality. And I know that a lot of, in burlesque, I think, and drag also, the personalities can seem very crafted and calculated. But yes. I think that's no different than any other performance career. I mean, I know there are people who think that Julia Roberts is the Julia Roberts in all her movies, but she doesn't have to be. And if you watch her interviewed, she makes that kind of clear.
Exactly. I definitely, I mean, when I speak about it, I get into a lot of conversations about what I see for my future. And I talk a lot about performers in other genres. Like, you know, I use Lady Gaga as a example all the time, who, you know, actually they are, you know, very intertwined in the burlesque community. Like, I don't need to go into all of that, but, you know, they are very familiar with burlesque. And I think of their career a lot and how they are not just doing music, but also acting and, you know, doing just all of these other things, but it's all under the Lady Gaga umbrella. And, you know, that's how I see the things that I want to, you know, attempt and hopefully thrive in the future. I love, you know, Miss Poison Ivory is so much a part of me. You know, I've been creating this character, but like, you know, I think when it comes to burlesque, yes, there is a main character, but like really of all the art, I think that we really do embody so many different personalities because we have different acts that, you know, relate to different things. We have acts that are, I mean, you know, it depends on who you are. But me personally, I have acts that are serious. I have acts that are funny, you know, and they're all Miss Poison Ivory, but they're just different sides of her. I like to talk a lot about archetypes when I teach my classes. And so I think that's kind of the best way to do it. I think that since all of us are made up of, they say, about 12 different archetypes, with 4 of them being universal, I tried to create Miss Poison Ivory's archetypes. And I realized that they are very similar to my own personal archetypes, except for when I'm creating acts for her, I'm just highlighting one or two of those archetypes at a time, you know? So it is me, but it is just one small part of me that I am trying to put on display at any given time.
It's like an amplified version
Mm-hmm.
for the stage, you know.
For the
Gotta
stage,
play for the
exactly.
back row. Yeah.
Exactly, but I want it to be genuine. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be necessarily attacking characters that aren't for me. I think when it comes to my personal style, because the way I choreograph and like how I put my acts together, I do incorporate a lot of freestyle into my acts, and you know, I only like to choreograph like I would say about 60% of my numbers anyway, because I love to have so much room for the interaction of the audience, which I think is the most important part. Because of that, I think it's easier when I stick to elements that I already recognize within myself, or characteristics that I already recognize within myself that I want to highlight and explore. And I do all that on stage, which, you know, I think actually is really great. Like, as I get immediate feedback for,
Mm-hmm.
you know, diving into these little bits of myself.
What are some of those key points? So there was this America's Next Top Model challenge several years ago, where they had to do those 4 photos, which represented each part of their personality, and it got progressively contrived. What would your 4 photos be?
Like, if I'm talking about what archetypes I would use to be those photos.
Yeah, either
Well,
archetypes
I think,
or
you
the
know,
adjectives.
honestly, my burlesque intro, at least my original burlesque bio, kind of said it all. I was part vampire, part hedonist, part queen, well, because that's became my title. And let's see which one, because that was only 3. I think bully a little bit.
In what way?
Well, I think that, you know, with all archetypes, there is a light attribute and a shadow attribute. And I think that I have always been a bit of a bully. I always am really good at pushing my agenda onto people, but I always try to do it through the light attribute. So I never am, you know, forcing to do, you know, people to do anything that I don't see them really wanting to do. If anything, I'm more of a coach. I take that bullying and I turn it more into a coaching. And I think I do that when I am performing as well. I think I'm saying I think a lot, but it's on there. This is happening. So I think that when I'm on stage and I am performing and I have this point of view that I'm trying to put across, or I have this fantasy that I'm trying to project onto the audience, having a bit of a bullying type of personality actually aids me in that, because it gives me kind of unwarranted confidence to put my, you know, story out there, or, you know, point of view out there to the audience, and feel confident that they will receive it. I think that archetype is what people recognize when they say, oh, Poison Ivory, you are a very confident performer. And I wouldn't even use confidence as something that I would say I actively try to engage when I am on stage. But the bullying part, yes.
You think you're tough?
Yeah, I think I am. I think I am pretty tough. But it's good, because I think I'm able to put a point of view out there on stage that is never like shoving anything down people's throats, but I do feel like it aids me in being able to attack these slow burn performances without any like intimidation, I guess.
Almost,
Or
do you feel that you're intimidating the audience? Do you feel the audience is sort of not necessarily being bullied into liking you, but
no.
you're going to take your chance right now, your shot in front of them, and they
Yeah,
don't like it.
I don't think I make the audience feel intimidated in a negative way.
Okay.
If they are feeling intimidated, I think it's because I am forcing them to confront some feelings within themselves, not necessarily because what I am putting on them is intimidating. That is not to say that I have not done that. I definitely have some pieces that are very political. I'll use that word, that, you know, go in and tell stories that a lot of people, I think, are not that comfortable in embracing. Like, I talk about slavery, both, you know, modern and, you know, historical slavery in some of my acts. And I think that in that way, yes, it is a little bit of a bullying tactic to force the audience to embrace this story that I am putting out there, or this point of view that I am putting out there without necessarily their permission. However, I think that I am a person who really embraces my vulnerability when I am on stage. And I think that people can see that. So balancing, you know, this bullying type of energy with this vulnerable side, I think makes people able to actually embrace what I'm putting out there in a easier way, because they're seeing that I'm not trying to be aggressive or, you know, confrontational. I am just saying, hey, I am creating this story from a place of pain as well as anger and all of these things. And I am presenting it out there, not because, you know, to punish you, but mostly just to get you to understand the point of view that's being presented. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think that I make the audiences feel intimidating. And I think anybody who meets me, or who has taken the time to meet me, because I do really try to make it a point to spend time, you know, after the show and hang out with the audience. I mean, I did more so before I had a baby, but, you know, I do it as much as I can. And I feel like anybody who gets to meet me will see that whatever feelings they may have been feeling on stage, once they, like, by seeing me on stage, I think meeting me and speaking with me somehow fills in the whole puzzle, you know? So then it's really easy to see, like, oh, wow, yeah, that was, like, you know, a really vulnerable exploration into your history. And you were sharing that with us, and that was a gift for us, you know? Like, I think that people are able to get that from encountering me. And I hope they get it too, also, from just, even if they don't meet me IRL, but,
well, that's part
you
of
know,
the
they're
that's
still
part of
able to get
your
that.
working on the videos is
Exactly. I mean, that's kind of brings
complete
me
that
back
circle.
into that, like wanting people to actually, and I know, you know, a lot of people, I've been watching a lot of YouTube tutorials and stuff about wanting to create your own channel. And they always advise against going into too much about your personal self, because they're like, you know, why would anybody care? Which is very true. Why would anybody care? But I think in my situation, it is a little bit different, because I am established in the burlesque community, even though it is a small community. So, you know, I do have a lot of people coming from these other places to my YouTube channel. So I do think I have a little bit more leniency to be able to talk more about the aspects of my life. And also, you know, I think my life is pretty interesting. I mean, I think it's interesting. So, you know, why not? And then maybe one day, if I ever get up to Lady Gaga status, and then people all like need to know everything that is Poison Ivory, I will already have all of these videos made and up on my YouTube for people to enjoy. So I'm just being proactive.
There's levels to it, because even though, I mean, one might think that we know, Lady Gaga is inarguably one of the most famous women in the world, but she also, I think, does maintain a privacy And I mean, most of our celebrities that are, high echelon, like Rihanna is someone who is very well known, but we don't know a lot of what she's up to. Beyonce, we don't know a lot of what she's up to. They sort of calculate and provide what they want the folks to know. And sometimes it takes them a long time to process it. So the audience gets this, what to them is very raw, but they've already gone through it. So they then, tweet Jay-Z and call him an asshole because they're mad at him. They're mad at him for her or something like that. So I think there's a lot to work through. And I mean, if you want to be a public figure, which not everyone does, a level of intimacy that you both cultivate and sacrifice, I think, I would say. And I think that's why some people can't do it. Some people just want to be the actor and not the star. And that's okay. But
that is completely okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like when it comes to burlesque, that is one of the things that I do love about burlesque, because I can be in one room and feel extremely famous, but like walk out of that room and feel like a normal person. And I do understand that like with more fame, you get less and less of that. However, for me personally, I think I am a little bit more open to the idea of being a more public figure in that way. And I think my vulnerability is one of my strengths, and that vulnerability does play in wanting, or not necessarily wanting, but feeling okay with showing more sides of my life. Like I said earlier, I do have dreams about writing a book and doing all of these things. And, I have no idea how far this YouTube situation is going to go, but I'm mostly doing it as an experiment to push myself into doing something that I'm not comfortable doing. That is part of how I think I help grow my special power in being vulnerable. I have to continue to do things that, are a little bit scary, just like how burlesque was such a eye-opening experience for me as an artist. So, wanting to do this YouTube channel may be a stepping stone into something else. It may, grow to be something really big. It may not. That is really not even the point. I didn't start doing burlesque because I was like gung-ho to win Miss Exotic World. However, it was very early on in my career that I did decide that I was going to make like a real, go for it, that I actually did want to achieve that goal. And being able to do so in, relatively a short amount of time, I think really boosted my confidence in trying to, and in, being okay with doing things outside of my comfort zone. Like if you would have asked me 10 years ago if I was, going to be a burlesque performer, I would have laughed in your face because it was so against, everything that I stood for. The idea of
even 3 years beforehand, even just 3 years? Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, like it's been like 8 years since I started in 2012. So if you would have asked me when I first moved to New York, basically in 2010, like, oh, you're going to be a burlesque performer, I would have been like, absolutely not. Like, there's no way that I would do that. Because the life that I lived before moving to New York was actually one that was really controlling and very, I had to like wear cardigans and be really modest. And, I know that people would be turning over in their grave, like people who aren't even dead yet, at the idea of me being on stage performing. But, I needed it. I was also in a place in my life when I had found or discovered that burlesque was still happening, or that there had been a revival. I was in one of the lowest points in my life. Like I didn't even have an identity. And I started burlesque as like a bucket list type of thing. I was going to do one performance and that was it. And, from there, it kind of launched this whole new life that I never really planned on. So then a couple of years later, here I am, never being a performer at all, to going full time and touring around with the show all across the country, to winning Queen of Burlesque, to like, you know, now that being my main source of income. And also, I don't know, I just think it's kind of magical the way that it happened. And I learned a lot about myself and what I'm able to do through my love of burlesque, and, you know, really trying to, it wasn't that I was trying to make a name for myself. I was just trying to make good art. Mm-hmm. I was told very early on in my career that we just don't need any more shitty burlesque out there. And I just did not want to be a person who contributed shitty work to something that I appreciated so much. So yeah, I think when it comes to these new things that I'm trying now, I take that same energy that I took into burlesque. Like, you know, my goal was to just put up the one video, and then I got so much, you know, excitement and, you know, encouragement from that first video that I was, okay, I'm going to go ahead and make video number 2. And then now that led to video number 3. And now I'm sitting here in this place where it's like, okay, this is where I am in that place where I could either just let this go or I can dive in. Mm-hmm. And I really think I'm just going to dive in some more, because, like, why not?
Do you like movies?
Any movies. Old movies, new movies.
Bad movies.
Sad movies.
I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And I'm Rachel Corky Shank.
And together we host Screen Snark, a movie podcast for movie lovers by movie lovers.
It's a podcast dedicated to the movies that are in our eyes, on our minds, and in our hearts.
Featuring guests of a wide selection of entertainment backgrounds, performers, writers, creatives.
So please join us for the casual cinema conversation every other Monday wherever you get your podcasts.
And follow us on Twitter at screen_snark, and we'll see you at the movies. All right, we're supposed to do that bit together.
That's cool.
PonyPod, a traveling performers podcast. If you like hearing from traveling performers, please subscribe and leave 5 stars wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm your host, Miss Mary Jane Green, the Treasure Tent Teaser. You can find me on the main social media platforms or by joining my mailing list at missmaryjanegreen.com. In the immortal words of Jack Kerouac, nothing behind me, everything ahead of me, as is ever so, on the road.
Hey, this is Victor, and I want to give a special shout out to the Patreon supporters: Joyce, Andrea, Alex, Bo Bridges, Amy, Dollbody, Princess Chris, Ruthless Retribution, Drew, Kelly Blue, Stormageddon, and Rob. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. If you would like to be one of those fabulous people that are supporting the pod and all my adventures, please go to patreon.com/weburlesque. Thank you. Absolutely. So what is this pre-2010 cardigan life that you speak of? Where were you before New York?
So I was living in Southern California, and right before I moved to New York, I was actually engaged to be married to, I guess I would say my high school sweetheart, but, you know, it was all very complicated. It was somebody that I had been intertwined with for many, many years, basically since the age of 13, all the way until I moved to New York when I was 27. Yeah, it was a relationship that became very toxic. It started off like really beautiful. It was young love, and you know, a lot of life things happened, and you know, as it does, sometimes people grow together and sometimes they grow apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at the time we were just so intertwined in each other's lives, we didn't really know what life would be like if we went our separate ways. And, you know, so we kind of just were getting married because that was the next thing to do. And I got a job working for this television show, Project Runway. A good friend of mine.
I've heard of it.
A good friend of mine was working for them as their set decorator. And the Project Runway show decided to do a Los Angeles season back in their 6th season. And it was summertime. At the time I was teaching, and my friend asked if I wanted to be her assistant basically over the summer. And I did it. I was off of school. I wasn't teaching. So I was like, yeah, I'll go ahead and do this fun little summer job. And, you know, working in the art department, it was only like a 3-week gig that you set up everything before they start shooting. And then you come back at the end for about 2 weeks to break everything down. And they liked me. And also I was local. So they wound up hiring me on like through the actual filming of the show. And they created a job for me that didn't really exist because, you know, all the other shows had been in New York. But by this time it had gotten so popular that they needed a sequestered cast wrangler. Like basically somebody who babysat all the people who got kicked off the show, because once you got kicked off, you still had to actually be there. You just weren't on camera. So I had to entertain them. I would like take them to the movies, or we went to like Universal Studios and stuff. So it was actually one of the best summers of my life. Excuse me.
That was their consolation from not winning, as they got to.
Yeah, and, you know, I have a bit of a nurturing personality. So, you know, these people would be sleep deprived and, you know, really irritable and upset for being kicked off. And some of them wouldn't speak for like 24 hours after getting kicked off the show because they were just so upset. And so, you know, I would kind of like coddle them. I would take anybody down for like cigarette breaks. Like, you know, I basically just was their friend. And you know, we started having these little outings, like these once a week outings, just to like, you know, boost everyone's spirits because they were stuck in hotel rooms. I mean, and you can imagine the people who got kicked off, like, you know, 1st and 2nd episodes, that, you know, in reality, they're filming 2.5 episodes a week, even though you see, you know, 1 episode a week. So they do everything in 1 month. And once they moved back to New York, I didn't work for season 7. And then in season 8, they contacted me again and asked me if I would come out. And so I did. I worked for season 8, 9, and 10. But while I was working during the first season, or my first New York season, that was the first time that I had been away from my surroundings back in Southern California.
That's
and
why
my
you
people.
went to New York at all, right? That's the only reason.
Yeah, that was the first time I went to New York, and that was the only reason why that I was there. And I was like, oh, well, you know, I can use the money to, you know, pay for all of the last minute wedding things. You know, I made it make sense as to why I was going to be gone for so long right before getting married. But while I was here in New York, I had a bunch of realizations that I should not be getting married to that person as much as I love them. That was never it. But we just weren't good for each other. And we needed to really, let go of our long commitment to each other in order for us to like find what really made us happy. So it was a horrible, hard decision, but I think it was one of the best decisions that I've ever made. And now it'll be 10 years since I officially moved here on this coming month. October 12th actually will be my 10-year New York anniversary.
Can you imagine living anywhere else?
No, well, you know what? Right now, I can imagine living in Minnesota. Only because I have a lot of wonderful friends out there who I love and adore and miss. And I do think it's very beautiful. However, I don't think I'm ever going to move out of New York if I can avoid it. My life is so established here at this point. And if I moved, I think it would be too difficult for my situation. My daughter and her parents, and it would be a lot of coordinating to actually move out of New York. And that's okay. I really do love living in New York. When I was at the height of traveling for when I was headlining a bunch of shows as Miss Exotic World, I always loved the fact that even if I went to the most exciting place, and I always hated having to go home from vacations before, but when I moved to New York, it felt like no matter where I went, even if I was having headlining a show in Rome or like performing in Paris or whatever, as wonderful and glamorous as it was, I was still going home to New York. So I don't know. That feeling has never really left me. So I think unless that happens, this is where I will stay.
I mean, that's great, though. I mean, some people go their entire lives without finding that town or that.
Yeah, definitely.
But you mean, you bring up traveling to like exotic locales. What are some of your favorite cities to visit?
Well, I've gotten to perform in Rome. That was really lovely. I performed in, let's see, where was my favorite place? Okay, so my favorite place to perform was actually not that exotic. Okay. My favorite place that I performed is actually in Sudbury, Canada. Okay. Which is about 4 hours outside of Toronto. A very small little town that you wouldn't even think had a burlesque scene there. But I've actually gone back to perform there. I performed there twice because I had such a wonderful time. That was my favorite place. I think performing in Paris was probably like, my dream location of where I could perform. And the place that I was really looking forward to performing this May was going to be New Zealand, but unfortunately that trip got canceled due to COVID, even though they did such an amazing job there. Like, I almost wish I went to New Zealand.
I don't know if you could be able to come back.
They handled it pretty much flawlessly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a dream place. I've been wanting to go to New Zealand, I don't know, maybe for the last 15 years. So getting offered to headline their burlesque festival, it was like a dream come true of having burlesque be the thing that brought me to my place that I've been dreaming to go. It's okay though. That was actually the second offer I got to perform in New Zealand. The first time I couldn't take it, and so it was an extra bummer for this time to be canceled, but third time is a charm. So I'm hoping that the next opportunity I have to go will be the best one. Maybe I'll just have to actually like take myself there. Which,
yeah, to see what it's like on your own terms.
Yeah. I love going on someone else's time though. So I'm never gonna like you said, oh, we're gonna pay for you to fly here. All you gotta do is perform for 2 nights, but like stay for 2 weeks.
Like,
yeah, that's that's what I was gonna do. So I'm hoping that opportunity does present itself again. We will see.
And since you have a 2-year-old?
I have she is going to be a year and a half. Next month. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I guess the time is so
it's all weird. I know, and she looks like a 2-year-old in my eyes, I think too.
Well, you had the opportunity not only to perform multiple times pregnant, which I know was the plan. Did you perform at Beehoff pregnant?
I did not perform at Beehoff pregnant because I got pregnant in July, so it was a month after when
missed it.
But that was a big Beehoff for me. So it was the year that I did my step down performance as Queen of Burlesque. But the year after, so this would be the last Beehoff that I attended, I did my very first postpartum performance.
Gotcha.
At Beehoff. So I was 8 weeks postpartum when I performed there. But yes, before that, I did perform all the way until I was 8.5 months pregnant here in New York. I stopped traveling when I was about the beginning of my 7th month. I stopped traveling, but I continued to perform for the next month and a half locally.
Why was that important for you? Besides it being your job. But why was that important to?
Well, it wasn't my job to perform pregnant. It's nobody's job to have to do that. And I feel like a lot of performers do opt out of performing once they start showing. It was important for me, though, because at the time of me getting pregnant, I had only seen maybe 3 or 4 burlesque performers perform pregnant in my entire career. And I don't mean several times seeing a performer. I can recall 3 times I went to a show and there was a performer pregnant on the stage. And one of those times was at my very first Burlesque Hall of Fame weekend. And I just found it to be so beautiful and so sexy and so captivating and just so vulnerable. It was just like, it took the performances to a different level for me. I saw a few that were comedy based and some that were a little bit more sentimental. And I really wanted to just really push the sexy as far as I could, because that I hadn't really seen. And I don't know, I felt like, hey, I was blessed with this pregnancy. I have this following. I love performing. Why not? My doctor was, giving me the thumbs up. So I performed all the way until I literally couldn't anymore because we were afraid that my water would break on stage, which would have been amazing, but probably not safe.
So right, you can write it into the fictionalized memoir.
Yes, exactly.
For dramatic purposes.
Yeah, at your show, it just happened. It was.
What was the response to that? Because I could imagine there are some audience members who are going to find it really beautiful or really a great statement, and you're probably going to have a few that are like, "Oh, you're kind of killing my jive here."
Hey, if I was killing anybody's jive, they were sweet enough to not bring that nonsense over to me, because I was a very pregnant, emotional woman, and I couldn't deal with any negative feedback. But I will tell you, some of the most touching feedback I ever received was while I was pregnant. I would have women, men, couples, children, not children, but youngsters, young people without children in comparison to me, would come up to me with tears in their eyes, talking about how beautiful it was. I had performers who, had babies before, tell me like, oh my God, if I get pregnant again, I'm going to do this. I always wanted to perform when I was pregnant, but I never saw anybody else do it. Like, I got such amazing feedback. And one of the greatest gifts I think I received is I was kind of first to know when a lot of burlesque performers started to get pregnant, either with their like second kid or their first kid. I would be getting inbox from people being like, oh my gosh, I haven't told anybody yet, but I'm really excited to tell you, oh, we're having a baby. So I think the greatest part about performing pregnant was the permission that I gave to other people to do the same. And for people who are not necessarily performers to see a woman on stage, 8 months pregnant, performing to Glory Box by Portishead and crawling on the stage naked and like being extremely sexual, and being able to see that and being like, oh, my pregnancy is not something that I need to be ashamed of and I need to hide. Like, yes, it is true. Most of us got pregnant, by being sexual. So to erase that out is, I don't know, it was ridiculous to me. Like, this was not, as much as I love Lucy, I wasn't trying to like show two beds and, I wanted the belly to be embraced as something that was beautiful. And, I think
part of your
okay
womanhood.
job. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel like a lot of people, lose touch with their sexuality and who they are. And even me, even as a person who was putting it on stage, as often as I could, I still dealt with a lot of insecurities. It's a really interesting thing when you're putting on your costume backstage, and every single time you put on your costume, it fits differently. Your body is changing so rapidly. And there'd be times where I'd be backstage crying because it was like, I felt unattractive. I had all of those voices in my head, of what the people in the audience were going to think, and, all of that. But I'll tell you, that is kind of what pushed me to just go ahead and get on the stage, is because I was having those insecure feelings. And I could say, what, this is my job. I am being paid to be here. I'm choosing to be here, but I'm being paid to do it. So I have the support of this venue. So you know what? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do my act. And I am pregnant. None of my acts were about being pregnant.
Sure.
I was just pregnant doing my acts. So, getting that rush from putting myself on stage in the height of my insecurity, going through like all of this body dysmorphia and everything, it was such a healing thing for me, because I got to have validation right then and there, from people clapping for me, for people being in awe of me doing my fan dances and everything and revealing my pregnant belly. And then having the audience be able to come up to me, because like I was go-go dancing until I was 8 months pregnant. I was doing the whole thing. And having people come up to me and just be like, so blown away, but in a positive way. Like, they were not expecting to see, and until, later on in my pregnancy, where I actually did have some fans coming out specifically because they wanted to see me performing pregnant. So I've had a lot of people traveling into town. I don't know. It was just so wonderful to like have people. I had more people coming up to speak to me after shows when I was pregnant than even after like winning Queen of Burlesque, to be perfectly honest. Like, people were just super excited to tell me how moved they were. And I'm telling you, like, big bearded men, like burly guys walking up to me with like tears in their eyes, like, that was just so beautiful. I'm telling you, I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. So I don't plan to get pregnant again, but you best believe if, the universe decides that that is my fate, I will continue to do it on stage. I think it was a really good experience for me as a woman to have such support in a career that you wouldn't think would be that supportive. So it was really nice.
What was it like to perform not pregnant for the first time in however many months?
The first time I performed not pregnant, I was excited because I was able to do an act that I hadn't done for a long time because it required a corset and all of that jazz. However, I was performing on the Burlesque Hall of Fame stage, so it was quite a lot of pressure. But it was a pressure that I asked for. I was performing in the Sunday night Icons and All-Stars show, which was quite an honor to be able to be in that lineup. And I decided that because my body was still healing, I knew that I was only going to be able to do so much energetically and physically. So I brought out a couple of performers onto stage with me. I brought out Jessabelle Thunder, who is a wonderful Black burlesque performer based in Los Angeles, as well as featured Black Knyle, who is also based in Los Angeles, who is my sister. Who I love very much. So, and both of these women are powerhouses in burlesque, in the Black burlesque community. And I've always, throughout my career, part of my political statement is if I bring anybody on the stage with me, they're typically Black burlesque performers, because I wanted to use my platform to highlight all of these beautiful Black and brown bodies that I think sometimes get overlooked and historically have always been overlooked, or if not overlooked, then just not included in the history. And so, in winning Miss Exotic World and having this wonderful platform that can't be erased, I wanted to bring as many Black bodies on the stage with me as possible. So in following with that, I did the same thing when I returned to the stage after giving birth. I brought, Egypt, who is a mother herself, as well as Jessabelle. Jessabelle is not a mother, but I brought them on because I thought that they would be the perfect two people to help bring the energy that I wanted in my, homecoming Beyonce-esque return to the stage. It wasn't that epic, but for me it was.
For you. I know that when you won, speaking of just sort of Black women specifically in burlesque being not only underrepresented, but under-recorded, like under-acknowledged, there was even the belief that you must have been the first Black Miss Exotic World. And that is partially because there was so much that has still to be archived and still to be brought to the forward.
Yes, that is basically what had given me the drive to run for the drive to try to win the title of Miss Exotic World in the first place. Because at the time, when doing my own research, I did not see that there had been a Black woman who had won the title in the past. It wasn't until after I was crowned and the Burlesque Hall of Fame announced me, congratulations to Poison Ivory, the second Black woman to win the title of Miss Exotic World, that I was made aware that I was the second Black woman who had done so. So in looking into it, there was a performer by the name of Rio Savant who had won back in, I guess it was 1996. So that would have been 20 years before I won. And, I think it's great. It actually didn't really ruin my experience as queen. I didn't really appreciate the way that I was announced. I felt like it didn't need to be said that I was the second Black woman to win it. However, if my winning brought Rio Savant and her contribution to burlesque out of darkness and put it on the pedestal that it deserves, then me winning served its purpose. It wasn't that I necessarily wanted to be the first. It was that I wanted there to be representation of a Black woman winning the title. Right. So finding out that Rio Savant had done so 20 years earlier was actually a wonderful realization, and something that now when you look back, it is very clear. However, I do think that where the competition was back in 1996 versus where it was in 2016 were two very different competitions. Sure. And the title of Queen of Burlesque did not start until long after it had moved from Hallandale and into Las Vegas, and it kind of got rebranded. So I am very much still the first Queen of Burlesque, the first Black Queen of Burlesque from the Burlesque Hall of Fame weekender, but I am the second Black.
Anyone dares try to take that away?
Pardon?
Anyone dares try to take that away from you?
No one will try to take it away. It can't be taken away. It is what the situation is. And the funny thing is, my mentor Perle Noire, that has been her main platform when it comes to me winning that title. She really wanted to make sure that it wasn't erased, the fact that I am the first Black woman to win the Queen of Burlesque title from the Hall of Fame weekender. So I, of course, love and appreciate her for saying that, because I definitely was not going to say any of that.
It's easier when somebody else makes the
yes, I'm glad that she made the fuss over me, and because she went through all that, I am continuing to make sure that I stand in my power and in my truth.
Exactly.
And that is something that I really did. So yay, patting on the back.
As a Black woman in burlesque, and as a Black woman, in America right now, how you doing? in terms of what's going on in the world? How do you maintain this glamour and defiance on stage, sort of unapologetic bullying, if you will, as you said? How do you do that and keep yourself centered without totally wrecking you?
Well, I'll start with keeping myself centered. I keep myself centered because I never go on stage alone. I realize that as a Black woman, that I am a political being just in being on stage at all.
Mhm.
I learned that very early on in my career, and the way that I protect myself is that I always invite my ancestors to join me when I am in any type of place where the light is being shined on me. That is how I keep myself centered. When it comes to what's going on in the world, for me, not much has changed. This has kind of been my reality for as long as I can remember. It is refreshing, and, it keeps me hopeful now, seeing that so many other people's eyes are being open to what it is to be a person of color, a woman, a queer person, all of these things that I represent. Now being able to look in people's faces and see that they are trying to see me has been hopeful, I guess is the best word that I have. Is it easy to deal with all of the things that now, because of social media, has been, made extremely visible? Like, even though I grew up in it, it is still even so much more visible to me now. And it was almost like, well, I knew that, not much has changed in our country, and that we're still dealing with racism and all of those things because I had experienced it myself. But to see it, really put out there for everybody to see has not been easy. It has not been easy for anybody. And, I think that's part of the reason why I'm grateful for having this forced time off, where I can take time for myself to process and heal through all of these things. And I don't have to put on a strong face and get out there on stage. But I know that the day is going to come again where I'm going to have to do that. And I hope that I have recovered enough in this downtime to be able to step back on stage fully and, take people on a journey that is not necessarily forcing them to deal with all of the things that are going on in the world. I still, first and foremost, love burlesque because it is entertainment. It is. I'm not planning on going back to the stage and doing any heavy hitting, hard political things. I did that already. I don't feel like I need to constantly contribute to that. Like, I feel as we were in this place of darkness, that it is my job to be the light. So that is kind of what I take with me through all of this, through all of my performances that I'm doing now virtually, and what I hope to be able to return to the stage with is that this idea and this feeling that I am the light, and I want to light up and uplift anybody who is in my vicinity, who is sharing that space with me, who I have the honor of sharing my art with. I just want them to feel uplifted at the end of my performances. So that's what I plan to do. That's what I'm going to do moving forward. I'm going to continue to do that. I'm going to focus on finding joy. I'm going to focus on, I feel very blessed to be a person who gets to do what I love. Yeah. Yes, it was very hard as an artist to go through COVID and lose all of my employment and everything, but I have been very, very blessed by the community. I have had fans and supporters reaching out and sending funds when I had car trouble, and just really taking care of me. So I do know whatever I have been putting out there in the world up until this point has been appreciated. Mm-hmm. So much so that people believe me and they support me even when I am not actively continuing to put out work. So because of that, I feel confidence to move forward in some of these other artistic endeavors that I'm pursuing. I know that I have my ancestors on my side always. I know the universe has my back, and I know that my fans and my supporters truly are there with me no matter what. And so I just want to keep putting out good art while I can, you know.
We met several years ago, I want to say at the New York School of Burlesque. We both took a class that Joe Weldon was doing. It wasn't a movement class. It was like a marketing class, essentially.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I thought maybe it was the taxes one, but I think it was.
No, it was basically how to present yourself as like a public figure, essentially. And then the first time we ever shared a dressing space was in New Jersey at a show in Boonton, and you did your Girl with One Eye act. And that was the first time that I was able to directly work with you, having seen you previously. And we hadn't known each other, but I want to say that you were extraordinarily present and kind being in that space, and that I felt really pleased about that. Having sort of appreciated you from afar, they say there's a risk in meeting folk that you admire. But then around this time, actually just about a little more than a year ago, I sent out a casting saying if anyone would do my birthday show.
I was hoping you would talk about this.
And I said who would want to do the most me show possible, which is Viktor hosting a show where other people dress up as him and do his acts and do my acts. And you were the first person to reply, and you were the first person cast for that evening. And I did not see that coming. And I was so moved, because we'd only been we'd been circles or ships passing for a number of times. I never had you at White Elephant as many times as I would have liked. You still maintain one of my top 10 favorite funny acts, which is your I Have Nothing act. That is on my list.
Yeah, I do love that. That one has become a signature of my true story.
One of the funniest damn things. And it maintained its glamour, and you have one of the tightest lip syncs. But
hey, I represent.
I was so appreciative, and that was just about a year ago that we did that, and I was so glad to have included you in that, and that just felt really very nice. It just felt very nice.
Thank you so much. When I responded, when I saw you put out that casting call, I was super excited, because the first act that I ever saw you do was the digital Get Down number. And I remember thinking that it was just brilliant. Like the act was so funny. So I was kind of jealous. I was like, why didn't I come up with that act myself? It was genius. So when I had the opportunity to recreate it, I jumped at it. I didn't even think that any of you would really even take me seriously. And then, you responded back, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually going to do this. Yeah. And I thought it was really fun.
You beat out a couple of people who asked for that act. I have to tell you, I was.
Well, I'm so glad that I did. And it was so funny. After we agreed, I was like, wait a minute, how am I going to do this? Because you allowed me to use your music that you edited. And I was like, it's basically AOL dial-up, it's like, how am I going to recreate that on my, new Mac computer? It just is like, how did I do that? And then I just, I was like, well, maybe he'll let me use his props. And you're just like, no, that's not fair. And I was like, you're right. But I'm so glad that you said no, because it forced my creative brain to actually activate. And then I came up with the whole idea that it was just an app that you can put on and to give you that classic AOL vibe. and then the whole act was created from there. And it was, I thought it was so fun to be able to, it wasn't a recreation. It was honestly, I think, almost a sister act to your original performer because I was performing for you. I was like the other person on the other side.
It was pretty great. It was pretty great. And I would tell you, because everyone wanted to know who was doing what, and every single time she was like, "Hey, who's doing Jessabelle Get Down?" And I'd be like, "Poison Ivory." They're like, "Oh, oh, yeah."
Oh my gosh.
That was a prideful moment for me because I frankly I had someone of your echelon and caliber and title and capability.
It was so fun. It was
acting a damn fool in front of me, and I loved it. I loved every
Hey, commit. If you're gonna do it, you have to fully commit.
But it has been
anything, you know that for me.
But it has been a delight getting to know you during this session, and over the years. I look forward to the day when we can both be in the same performance space again.
Yes, same.
Whenever that may end up being. I will put in the footnotes of this episode all of the ways that people can keep up with what you've got going on, including your YouTube channel, and any of your socials.
If you think of me, book me. You can find my information down below.
Well, thank you, Ivory. Please be well. Keep you and your family healthy and safe during the madness that is this time. And I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you so much. This has been great. Thank you for having me. Absolute pleasure. Have a good rest of your evening. Mwah. You too. Bye-bye. Bananarama? Okay, all right.
A band?
Yeah.
Yes. As a pastor's kid growing up in the 90s, there was a lot of mainstream entertainment that I was sheltered from.
Stephen Root, he does one of the voices.
Okay.
You know him from News Radio.
Do I?
You know him from Office Space.
Do I?
You know...
Most things, really. So, now that I am an independent and out queer 30-something, I'm finally asking my friends to teach me about all the stuff I missed out on. Wait, Raffi did Beatles covers?
Yes, he did.
My mind is blown.
He did Octopus's Garden. And,
Yeah, I remember Octopus's Garden. No. I didn't know that wasn't a Raffi original until just now. The Re-Education of Hazel Tart. Subscribe now.
Kevin Costner. He was so foxy.
I know the name, I don't know the face. I cannot... What is Kevin Costner? Can you just show me a picture of Kevin Costner's face, please?
Think of the guy,
this is hurting
not Cheech Marin, but think of the other guy in Tin Cup.
I've never seen that.